Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today for this webinar on AI readiness across Western Australia local government. My name is Pierre Schopp. I'm a director at the strategy group, and I'll be hosting today's session. So we have a busy and exciting agenda ahead of us today, so let's get moving. Before we start, I want to start with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the continuing connection of Aboriginal people to country, culture, and community. We embrace the vast Aboriginal cultural diversity throughout Western Australia, including Boorloo and the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people, where WALGA is located. And we acknowledge and pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. We're very honored to have a great panel of presenters with us today. I am joined by Nick Sloan, who is the CEO of WALGA, which shares some amazing perspective of WALGA on AI in local government. Nick Sloan was also critical as part of the project we conducted last year with WALGA on AI readiness across the sector. Welcome, Nick. Also, we're going to have with us Liam Hoffman, who is our head of AI at the strategy group. He will walk us through the findings and recommendation of the AI readiness assessment we conducted last year. Welcome, Liam. And finally, Miriam Sanchez Blanco, who is the Chief Technology Officer of the City of Stirling, who was part of this AI readiness research project that we conducted, and we share some real-world lessons from implementing AI in an organization. Between all of this amazing presenter, I hope you really find today, give you a clear picture of where the sector stands and what the barriers are, and most essentially, what practical action could be taken to start on your own AI journey. Just a quick word on the strategy group. So we are a boutique consultancy, and AI is really at the core of everything we do. We work at the intersection of technology, customer experience, and employee experience to create meaningful AI capability for our clients and customers. Last year, we partnered with WALGA and a small group of 12 LGs across Western Australia to really deeply understand where they're standing around AI and how ready they were to start implementing AI solution. We spent a week in Perth, Liam and myself, embedded with WALGA's team and the team of the different LGs involved in this project. It was a fantastic experience. We conducted workshop, we had survey and interview, and today we're very delighted to be able to share and discuss some of the results coming out of this project. Just to show you how we use our hour today, we'll start with Nick, who is going to share WALGA's perspective on AI and why this assessment we've done matters. Liam is then going to take us across the findings of the report where we discover and some of the recommendation coming out of this project. And Miriam will share a City of Stirling experience on the ground. We'll then open to Q&A and close with some key takeaways from the session. Along the session, please feel free to drop your question in the chat as we go. We'll bring them back during the Q&A segment. And that's it. With that in mind, let me now hand over to Nick to open the first session. Nick, over to you.
Look, thanks very much, Pierre. And look, I'd echo your comments. This is a really exciting afternoon and a fantastic opportunity for us to be able to share the results of the work that we've been undertaking. And I would really like just to echo Pierre's comments and extend a warm welcome to those of you that have taken the time to join us for today's webinar. Artificial intelligence holds huge promise in enabling local governments to innovate in how they deliver high quality services to their communities. I think history will show that continuing to look for traditional problems to contemporary solutions, it isn't going to work for us, which is why artificial intelligence is so important. So over the last few years, we have been doing a lot of work to explore and chart the opportunities, and equally importantly, the risks that AI poses for local government in Western Australia. As part of this, we initiated a whole of sector assessment on local government's readiness to safely and effectively use emerging AI technologies. In considering the potential applications of AI, we need to be very mindful of the cybersecurity risks that these new technologies can pose. AI is inherently linked to cybersecurity. The findings of the assessment are extremely insightful, and they provide a whole of sector view of current readiness and also the areas of opportunity which we're going to be exploring this afternoon. WALGA's AI readiness assessment, delivered in conjunction with the strategy group and Science, is one of the largest projects of its kind undertaken for local governments to date. And I think we can all be extremely proud that we really are leading the nation in terms of this work. This work has drawn on input from representatives from more than 100 Western Australian local governments, along with detailed assessments conducted on a smaller sample of WALGA members, as Pierre just alluded to. What this has shown us is that there's huge diversity across local government in Western Australia, and AI can present different opportunities and challenges depending on your local context. The resulting report provides a snapshot of current readiness, as well as an overview of enablers and suggestions for building readiness within your local government. So for smaller local governments, this research, supported by on-the-ground examples from LG, such as the City of Stirling, I'm looking forward to that presentation later this afternoon, presents an opportunity to confidently adopt proven technological solutions. WALGA has already leveraged some of the findings of this work in our ongoing advocacy and engagement on behalf of the sector. And a great example is WALGA's 26-27 state budget submission, in which we identified that dedicated funding to pilot AI for local government in WA would provide the opportunity to explore high-impact applications of AI across state and local government, especially in areas where state and local government responsibilities intersect. This initiative would enable local governments to test innovative solutions to pressing policy challenges, with successful pilots scalable across WA and adaptable for broader use in state government as well. So by taking a structured and informed approach to piloting AI, both state and local governments can reduce delivery risks, avoid duplication, and ensure responsible deployment of this technology. So thank you to everyone who took part in the assessment, including those of you that are joining us online today. This research and this report wouldn't have been possible without your insights and the time that you shared with us. Following today's webinar, a copy of the report will be made available on the WALGA website. I would particularly like to acknowledge our project specialists from the strategy group and Science for their support. So to Jeffrey Tobias, to Pierre, who's the director at the strategy group, Liam Hoffman, who's the head of AI at the strategy group, who we'll be hearing from shortly, and the entire team for taking the time to delve into the results today. Thank you very much for your support for this really important piece of work. So I'm now going to hand over to Liam, who will step you through the findings of the report. Liam, over to you.
Thank you, Nick. I think it's really valuable to hear what you say around the strategic intent of WALGA and what prompted this work. And very excited also to hear about this initiative in supporting local government across the state to pilot and try new AI solution. I think this is very exciting. This is something we'll have a look and monitor very closely, and definitely position Western Australia as a leading state in terms of safe AI adoption across Australia, which is really exciting. Now back to the AI readiness assessment. You would think the natural question is like, what were the outcome of this assessment? What did we actually find? And for that, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Liam Hoffman, who is the head of AI at the strategy group. We're going to talk to you about the result of the research. Over to you, Liam.
Thanks, Pierre. Thanks, Nick, as well. So in the next section, I'm just going to take you through some of the key pages and highlights in the sector report, as well as some of the key recommendations and next steps on the back of the results, and also a bit more tailored to where you are or where you may potentially be in your AI journey. So, sorry, let me just get the slides going. So as Nick mentioned, 108 local governments participated in this assessment, which is a really strong response from the sector. What you can see here is a bit of the geographical spread across WALGA zones, with about a quarter from metropolitan areas and the remainder from regional WA. As mentioned already, this assessment itself combined a bit of quantitative and qualitative methods. We had over 300 individual representatives completing the online survey, and then we applied role-based weighting so that those larger local governments with multiple respondents didn't skew the results. That was also complemented by those in-depth interviews, co-design workshops with that 12 selected representative local governments to go deeper into the barriers and the opportunities around this technology. Moving on, I think this is the first snapshot and a really good framing slide for today. So as you can see here, 74% of local governments in the sector are in what we'd call the early stages of AI adoption. That's either in pre-awareness or exploring. Then you've got about 29% that haven't really started engaging with AI at a formal organizational level yet. You've got 45% which are in the exploring phase, which just typically means there's interest, there's informal activity, not much structure, coordinated, or at scale. And then on the other end, you have about 23% in planning, piloting, or implementing stages. We had just one local government at the time in the sector actively implementing. And before I move on, I just want to make sure this hits home around the data. A low adoption stage isn't a failure in any sense. For many local governments, particularly smaller ones with limited resources and competing priorities, the fact that you're even exploring AI is a genuine step forward. And so the point is, this is a baseline. It's not to create a league table or anything like that. It's to help you understand where you sit and what might be the right steps to move forward with. In terms of the overall readiness score, it sits at about 14%. And now, before anyone actually reacts to that number, I just think it's worth putting it in context. AI, or particularly generative AI, which we've all heard of, is moving faster than any technology that we've ever seen before. And local government inherently is quite complex. Most of you are effectively running the equivalent of 11 to 20 businesses under one roof. So the idea that any organization operating at that level of complexity would be fully ready for a technology evolving this fast is unrealistic. So 14% is an honest baseline. I think the key insight from the data is that local governments making progress aren't the ones necessarily with the biggest budgets. They are the ones that have invested in their people's understanding of AI and embedded it in their strategic thinking. Those in planning, piloting, or the implementing stages have nearly double the readiness score of 27%, and that's primarily been driven, as you can see here, by the skills and capability as well as the strategic readiness. So if we look at how all those break down across the 6 dimensions, strategic readiness, which is at the top on the left there, and you'll see this more in your report, measures how well AI has been embedded in your strategic direction. The AI is being discussed at the leadership level in most local governments, which is great, it's encouraging, but in most cases, it hasn't yet made it to formal strategic planning or having dedicated budget behind it. And there's a gap between talking about AI and planning for it, which is fine. You've then got organizational readiness, which looks at whether your organization is set up to support AI adoption in terms of staff awareness and having dedicated resources. I think many staff at this point recognize AI will impact their work, but I think local governments need more structured forums where people can actually discuss, share applications, and build their understandings together. Then you've got skills and capabilities readiness. So this in particular assesses whether your people have, the knowledge, the training, the change management, which is a really important one to support to adopt AI effectively. The strongest capability was having staff who could actually evaluate AI solutions of vendors and procurement processes, but the market's getting saturated more and more every day. So the biggest, on the back of that, the biggest gap was in AI awareness training, change management, and that change management piece is one that we keep coming back to because it's the thing that actually determines whether adoption sticks in the long run. Mm. Then you've got the risk and governance readiness, which covers, whether you've got policies, processes, and the governance structures to extend to responsible AI use as it evolves, which is always going to be on a quicker timeline. Some local governments we did see in the planning and piloting stages have started here, which is great, but very few have established dedicated governance groups. So we hope to see more of that in the future. So that's a gap that still needs addressing, particularly as tools like Copilot or ChatGPT do become embedded in everyday platforms and staff starting to use AI, whether there's a policy out or not. Then you move into the technical parts, the two technical dimensions. Technical readiness really just measures the state of your data and digital infrastructure. As we know, as we've heard probably a lot, garbage in, garbage out. So sector-wide data quality, hygiene, classification remains significant gaps. So AI is only as useful as the data you can work with it. So if the data is not clean, it's not accessible, AI tools will underperform. And then the last one there is being cybersecurity readiness. So that looks at how prepared you are to manage the security risks that come with AI. I will touch on a couple of these that were in the report. Most local governments are aligned to state-issued standards. I know that most local governments are on their Essential 8 journeys, and that's a solid starting point. But there's still quite a bit to do, especially as the technology evolves, as there's a lot of risk management, response planning, and training needed to further develop. So those are your readiness dimensions. In there, we've also had a couple of more perceptual questions around barriers to AI adoption. I think the barrier to starter reinforces a lot of what we heard in the surveys and the interviews with the 12 that were the smaller samples, the top three being lack of technical expertise, budget constraints, and competing priorities. And those are consistent across the sector. I think what's worth noting, though, is how the barriers do shift depending on where you sit on the adoption curve. So, for instance, local governments in the pre-awareness or exploring stages, it was overwhelmingly a skills and knowledge gap. You don't have the expertise to know where to start, which is fine. For those in the planning stage, the biggest barrier becomes those unclear use cases or benefits, which makes sense because you've moved past the should we do something stage, and now you're stuck in the what exactly should we do? Where's the ROI actually going to come from? And then for those in the piloting or implementation stage, it's about competing priorities. You've got the intent, you've got the early capability, but AI is fighting for attention alongside everything else that's in that agenda. So understanding which barrier is most relevant to you at this stage is actually the first step to addressing it. I'll just quickly touch on use cases. So as part of the survey, we also asked about whether local governments have been looking at any particular use cases or opportunities. Only 20% of local governments formally identified AI use cases, and 45% at the time hadn't even started yet. The good thing is that the top three areas that had the most use cases around it were for internal productivity, for customer service automation, and operational decision support. And these are sensible starting points. They're high volume, they're low risk, and they're visible to both staff and leadership. So on the right track there. As I mentioned before, our partner SciGens also conducted a rigorous review of some of the cybersecurity risks around AI. And as we know, as we've already started to see in the news and things like that, AI adoption does introduce a set of cybersecurity risks that most local governments aren't yet equipped for. They're not equipped to manage them, and they do deserve proper attention, especially as many of you do work through the Essential 8 frameworks. So the first, I'll just touch on these very quickly, but the first is the trust boundary expansion. So this is really about as AI tools connect to more of your systems and data, the boundaries that traditionally kept things segmented really start to blur. So that'll create new vulnerabilities, high levels of system access across multiple platforms, which will complicate governance and obviously increase the attack surface. Second one there is around cyber supply chain opacity. So this one is around that AI solutions often incorporate pre-trained models, third-party libraries, as well as APIs, and that make it quite difficult to trace where the data flows, who built what vulnerables you might be inheriting. And so that complexity in itself does reduce transparency, and that's a real risk for local governments that, obviously need to maintain trust with their communities. The third is going to be access and control privileges. AI systems, they can introduce new complexities into how access is managed. If an AI agent is given only overly broad permissions, it may access sensitive data in ways that go beyond its intended scope. And we've seen cases like that happen out in other organizations. And then you've got users who can also use the AI models to bypass traditional access controls and things like that. So that's an important one. The fourth is integrity, manipulation, and impersonation. So this one is about attackers being able to alter AI's goal, its instructions, its system prompts, or its training data to change its behavior completely. On the other side of this, you have things that we see very much in media today: spoofing, deep fakes, other tactics that can be used to facilitate impersonation using or against those AI systems. And the last one here is dependency poisoning. So you've got third-party software, you've got APIs, you've got model updates that can become those entry points to compromise AI systems overall. So these are a number of practical considerations that emerge as soon as AI tools start interacting with your specific systems and your specific data. And so this is a really good framework to start off with, depending on where you are in your AI journey. As part of the more specific engagement with the 12 local governments, we did engage in a bit of a co-design to identify 8 AI principles that they were benchmarked against both the Australian government's AI ethics principles and the Western Australian government's principles-based policies. These aren't meant to be prescriptive. They're meant to be sort of a flexible foundation you can adapt to your own context, to your size and stage of readiness that I identified earlier. So a smaller, regional shire might implement these very differently to a large metro council or local government, and that's by design. The report also will include practical suggestions for how both larger and the smaller local governments might approach each principle. All right, so that was pretty much all the slides or the pages that were in the report. And now I just want to touch on the practical aspect of what does this all mean? This is where I want to spend most of our time because this is what's actually actionable. So what we've done here is we've consolidated all the adoption stages you saw earlier into 3 distinct categories that reflect where you probably are. Hopefully you can identify yourself in your AI journey. Starting with the 29% of the sector in the pre-awareness stage. So if you're in this stage, you're a local government that did unfortunately get below 14% on your readiness score. And this just means things like, you don't have an AI strategy, you may not have governance around AI tools or technologies, you may not have the formal organizational awareness or capacity to actually invest in understanding what AI can and can't do. I think the biggest risk at this stage is not that you're falling behind on AI. It's just the fact that almost certainly already, like you've already got staff without any using it without any organizational guardrails around it. So you'll have people who have access to ChatGPT on their phones, being able to paste things into free tools. You'll have them being able to experiment in ways that are well-intentioned, but maybe completely unmanaged. And that's that shadow AI problem that does crop up in every organization. So in terms of 4 recommended steps here, there's a couple of really quick wins here. First is just starting with awareness and education, not tools or platforms. So before you buy anything or roll anything out, invest in helping your people understand what AI actually is, what it can do, what it can't do, and what the risks are. I'm sure City of Stirling will talk about this as it was part of their AI journey shortly. It doesn't need to be expensive. It can be simple as a facilitated session with your leadership team and key staff. Second is understanding where you actually stand. So you might think, this from the top down where your local government sits, but there's a lot of value in actually looking at that from the bottom up as well. So running like a short internal survey or even just having structured conversations with leaders across your directorates and the staff on the ground, find out what tools people are already using, what tasks they're spending the most time on, where they see those opportunities and what they're worried about when it comes to AI. It's pretty much certain that you'll discover that AI adoption is already happening informally, and this gives you something real to work with rather than starting from a blank page. Third is putting minimum guardrails in place early. So you don't need necessarily a comprehensive AI policy on day one, but you do need something, at a minimum, a clear position on what those tools that are approved for use, whether that's Copilot or something else, what data can be shared with the AI platforms, and as well as who to talk to if staff have questions. Even a one-pager with guidance will give people enough confidence to explore responsibly rather than either doing nothing or doing everything without oversight, right? Fourth is developing an AI strategy. And I'd encourage you to think of this not as a technology strategy, but as a people and capability strategy that happens to involve AI, if that makes sense. So start with the problems you're trying to solve and the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and then work backwards to where AI might help. So for a small local government, that might just be a 2-page document that identifies 3 priority areas and a practical plan to explore them over the next 12 months or something like that. Doesn't need to be complex. Then we move to the largest cohort, which is about 55% of the sector. These are local governments with readiness scores ranging from about 16 to 26%. You've got strategic foundations in place, you've identified some use cases, but maybe you've got some governance and risk gaps that are remaining, and capability building overall is probably not a coordinated approach, it's still quite uneven. So I think the pattern that we see a lot at this stage is that local governments know AI adoption is important. They haven't built the infrastructure enough, the capability or the coordination to move beyond sort of those pockets of intent or experimentation. You might have already identified a couple of champions or staff that are keen on driving things forward, but it hasn't become sort of an organizational effort yet. So in terms of recommendation here, first place to start would be to map your people and customer experience to basically find where AI has the highest impact. So don't start with the technology and look for problems to solve. start with the workflows, the pain points, the bottlenecks, and ask where AI could actually genuinely, make a difference. In local government, I think that often means looking at processes like, development applications is a big one that a lot of local governments are talking about. Customer request triage, records management, report writing, admin tasks, where staff spend significant time on structured, repetitive tasks that ultimately prevent them from actually doing more complex, judgment-based work that actually needs a lot of human effort. I think second is the design and capability building around what what their roles actually are. I know there's a lot of generic AI training out there at the moment, and it's better than nothing for sure, but it's not necessarily what drives adoption. What drives adoption is showing a planning officer or someone like that how AI can actually help them draft conditions, or showing a customer service team, how AI could help them respond to common queries more quickly, or showing a communications team, how to use AI to draft and refine community updates or something like that. So what I'm really saying is role-specific, workflow-specific capability building is ultimately what's going to make the difference. I know budget constraints, different priorities often get in the way, but the best outcome will be from being hands-on, because people need to use the tools in a supported environment, not just watch some presentation or video about them. Third is building out a balanced and flexible governance and risk framework before you pilot and implement anything. So I emphasize balance because we've seen a lot of local governments and organizations across many sectors go one of two ways. They either have no governance at all, or they build something so heavy it becomes a barrier to do anything. We've seen that. Practically, what works is more of a simple risk tiering approach. So you've got low risk use cases, like I mentioned before, drafting internal content or summarizing meeting notes or something like that, that can move quite quickly with light oversight. And then you've got the higher risk use cases where you're involving maybe community data or decision making that needs a bit more scrutiny and approval. And that way you're not really applying the same level of governance to everything, and your people can still make progress. Last one here, and I've already sort of banged on about it a bit in terms of investing in change management. And it's more than just acknowledging it, because I think, as we know, in local government, your people are already navigating significant change across many fronts, not just technology. You may be implementing an ERP system. You may be moving from on-premise to cloud. AI is landing on top of all of that and everything else everyone's dealing with. So if you don't manage the human side of this transition deliberately, you sort of end up with tools that people that don't use, or worse, tools that people actually resent. And we've seen this in organizations already, so it's an important one. Last one I'll touch on here is the piloting and implementing. So the final cohort, which is about 13%, is local governments that are actually actively piloting or implementing AI. You've already identified the use cases. You've got pilots underway or in planning. You've allocated budget. You've got staff resources. The challenge here is different. You've built the intent. You've built the foundations. Now the question is how you actually turn that momentum into sustained practice, and at scale. How do you actually move from AI as a project to AI as a capability, and embed it across your teams and workflows? And this is sort of where the leading edge is at the moment. But first really is strengthening governance and cyber posture to match the pace of adoption. As I mentioned before, technology is moving really fast, and this is the stage where the risks become even more concrete. You're connecting AI tools to your systems, to your data, to your customer interactions maybe. And practically that just means reviewing your access controls and where AI tools are introduced. You're making sure your incident response plans account for AI specific threats, and you're having clear processes for evaluating security posture and of any new AI vendor or platform before it connects to your environment. Second is a bit different to what I said in the last stage, where it's not so much about just mapping, it's about redesigning your highest impact workflows to be AI native rather than just AI assisted. So there's a meaningful difference between bolting AI onto an existing process and then rethinking the process with AI as part of how it works. So this is a really important one because you just need to rethink the entire workflow, how information is collected, how conditions are generated, how quality is checked, and the ability to evaluate outputs and to know when to rely on it versus when to override it. Third is assigning ownership of AI-enabled workflows and to build your team's capability to run them. So somebody needs to own each AI-enabled workflow, not just the tool itself, but also the outcomes that it has to deliver. And lastly, if you're able to, connect and collaborate with peer local governments, at every stage to advance the sector together. This is one of the things that I find, pretty compelling about local government as a sector, because you're not competitors, you're peers, you're all trying to serve a community as effectively as possible. And so the governments that are furthest ahead do have the opportunity to share what they've learned, to come together, share what's worked, what hasn't, and help accelerate progress across this entire sector. And WALGA is obviously well placed to facilitate that, but also the sector overall. Thank you very much. That is everything that I wanted to share with you. I'll now hand over back to Pierre, who will then take us through the next section with Miriam.
Thanks a lot, Liam. Thank you for sharing the result of the report and the assessment. And I think what's fascinating is how you've been able to clearly articulate what should be next step consideration for each type of local government organization, depending on where you're at on your journey, where you're just starting building awareness, or you start doing some work, or you're already quite advanced and you're looking at piloting and potentially scaling some of the solutions. So extremely interesting. So we've heard a bit about the sector level result, but now I'm sure everybody's keen to understand some concrete example of what does an AI journey looks like in a local government. And I am delighted to introduce Miriam Sanchez Blanco, Chief Technology Officer at the City of Sterling, who is going to share what that journey actually looks like from inside an organization. Hi, Miriam. How are you?
Hello, Pierre. How are you?
I'm good. So let's get started. I have a few questions I wanted to ask you. Okay, bring me back in time and say, how has this approach of AI adoption look like at City of Sterling?
What a time to be alive. It's been 2.5 years, but it really feels like 6 months, right? I've just had the realization that I've been working for City of Sterling for nearly 3 years.
Oh, wow.
And we've been talking AI since. So let me tell you how we approach AI adoption with optimism, those two words. It all started with a risk management group, and I was invited just to talk to them, including executive also, about the risk involving with AI. AI was emerging at the time, so they didn't quite understand it. They wanted to know more, talk about the foundations of knowledge, but they were really interested in the risk approach. At the time, it was just ChatGPT. It was, making. It was socialized, it was normalized, it was at our fingertips, right? Generative AI. Suddenly it was something really good. But from the point of view of local government, they wanted to understand what was the risk, because there was a lot of our community didn't like it.
Interesting.
And our workforce certainly didn't like it. They thought that, AI was coming here, robots and everything, just to take on their jobs. So I had the opportunity to explain to them a high-level AI, the types of AI, that it's been in place for nearly 20 years. I always use the phone, in the simplest way. It was already in our phones. And our phones was not taking our jobs. It was just making our lives a little bit more easier, more automated. So eventually what we understood is that the biggest risk of AI was not to embrace it. So there's many ways that AI can be really useful for. They're really bad things for, but if we can govern it, if we can apply some good practices, do's and don'ts, then we should be looking at it, certainly not to say not to it. Local governments have a tendency, of government in general, to be behind on technology and advancement. We have exponential IT, everything is just going too fast. Are we also going to be behind on this? This is an amazing tool that can really, really leverage things. So just name one local government that has ever said we have enough people to do everything that we need, increasing demands, increasing services. No, thank you. We don't need any useful tool. No one said that ever. So that's how we saw AI. It was not to dispose our people, but to actually to elevate them, to reduce the minimal, and I'm talking specifically about generative AI. It was to reduce the minimal tasks and allow them to use their skills, that what they're really good at, but we don't have the capacity because we're just bogged down with things that are just not elevating us and certainly not our community. So that's what we did. So we did town halls with our people just to normalize AI and to say, this is our position. We want to embrace it and we want you to come to the journey. AI is not here to take your job. AI is here to take your job to the next level, the level up, to give you capacity to make things easier. We're not going to be laying off jobs.
You demystify all the application of AI and the value of AI.
Yeah, it was entry level. Something is going to assist you. We're not going to, come on, this is local government. It doesn't matter. Everything, change takes time and it takes time to change. This is going to be evolving. And one of the parts of the responsible AI is that it's sustainable and it's done with our people, not against our people. So that was our point. And to what Liam said before, we use change managers. So we have a really good change management team here. My hats up to them. So we make this a people-centered initiative, which is many initiatives. Yeah, but for our people, with our people. That was the center of approach. And we just started. I think we're known for this. We started just with Copilot. So that was our safe and secure way to have our data private and to secure it. So no ChatGPT, no Grok, no the other OpenAI platforms. It was Copilot. It's free. It comes with our Microsoft E3 enterprise agreement. So why not? So yeah, that's how we started. Just something very easy, virtual assistants to demystify the danger of it. So our focus is very quickly. Here we are, 2.5 years later.
That makes a lot of sense. And it makes sense to start with Copilot. I assume you're already working on the Microsoft Azure environment, so it's already within the existing council system and environment, so it's already compliant. Yeah, that makes sense.
In terms we were not in Azure before. That's really what I want to demystify later. You don't have to be all in Azure to be using these things, but yeah, we can talk about that later.
I'll talk about this for sure. You mentioned risk and governance. So how did you approach governance and how did you build a governance around this to give people the confidence that they could use and explore safely some of these solutions?
Yeah. So for us, the first thing that we did was do's and don'ts. So with change management, we created some very easy to follow leaflets and, some aside on our internal websites, just do's and don'ts. You can do this with generative AI. Please don't do this with generative AI. If you're using Copilot, go for your life. You can do all these things. ChatGPT, be careful. So what we did also is put a lot of effort on what people could be using generative AI at home. So then they understand of the risks of using OpenAI frameworks and platforms for their own privacy and security. And I think we won a lot of followers by giving them those guardrails, if you wish. I believe that we were one of the first publishing an AI policy. For us, it was very important. At the time, it was, well, Liam said, 2 pages. Yeah, it was nothing simple. Too much, very simple, and it was based on federal states on some architectural principles for AI. Very simple, very easy to follow. Again, we did a lot of comms, we changed management, just to normalize things, just to give people, more. For us, it's about repeating.
Exactly.
Repeating and normalizing words and tools. We did a lot of, we put a lot of focus on the collaboration between IT and business across business units. So before we use any tool of AI, come and talk to us in IT. Why? Because we can do security and data privacy scan. Somebody from Ranger Services that might be system savvy, but this is our core and we know what questions to ask. So it's a collaboration exercise, and then we can amplify, we can reduce the risk to the city and to our community. What else we would do? So many. we brought we're using the state's governance framework and the AI assessment. So it's free. It's been done by it's been created by DGov. So we're just leveraging things that are out there for our use. We're big enough that we think that we can use them. We've something small but mighty. Just had built-in clauses with procurement. Collaborating with them in our requests for quotes or for in our tenders, clauses on data privacy, security, and AI use. All of that is embedded. Yeah, very easy to do. It really decreases the amount of risks and security and data privacy risks that you might have just by stating those ones, and then it's part of the contract. Governance, have the executive board and council involved and informed. They go to so many conferences. Then they come to me and they say, "Hey, have you heard of?" "No, I haven't." "Tell me more about it." So they're like really involved and really interested. And mainly council, they're amazing. They love this. That there's been a great call from "What is this? We don't want it," to "Why are we not using this?"
So they're kind of big advocates across the organization.
Yes, and they also understand the risks for data privacy and for security. So they actually understand when we put a program of work, we're talking about we need to do this initiative, they absolutely support it because now they understand, they have the foundational knowledge that it's needed for them in order to approve projects or understand what's going on with in the city. And we've put a lot of focus on security and data privacy on everything that we've done. So, for instance, if I go to our Copilot pilot, so we were piloting the licensed version of it, the one that you have to pay, still minimal amount of money for all the benefits, but we really need to secure our M365 environment. We really, really need to secure it. So the tool doesn't have access to things. It only accesses what I can access and no more. So that was a little bit of work. And but I have to say, for anybody that wants to attend this, so there's something called readiness assessment. It's done by Microsoft partners, and most of the work is subsidized by Microsoft. So they have a massive program of work with focus on local governments, so we can access those things. So it shouldn't be an impediment to really get on with the task in a way. Sometimes is how big it is, but if we split it in small steps, then it's chewable.
Baby steps.
And then funding, you can have Microsoft funding if you want to use Copilot, the M365, the licensed version. They have a lot of programs of work, and just talk to your Microsoft account manager.
That makes a lot of sense. Could you give me an example of a practical AI adoption use case, or something that has been either very common or surprising to you? Any example you'd like to share?
Oh, there's so many. I love them. In the city, we use we have quite a lot of auto AI in products. They're coming in. So we have in the CCTV in the Balcasa Recycling Center. We have a form of AI that detects fires, so that's good. Link sites, I love that one. That's the anti-drowning system. We put it in Inglewood, a swimming pool, and it saved a life.
Oh my gosh,
saved a life already. And we're going to extend its use. Idle Ranger, so anything on vehicle, the permit management and the infringements, that's all AI based. My team uses Copilot for GitHub for Copilot for GitHub, sorry, for development. It's a lot faster. So something that before could have taken us 2 months, now it can take us 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
That's, and as we're learning more, we are trying to apply everything, but anything like case summarization, starting a document from scratch, give me a new policy based on some new evolving legislation. And
following a specific template or things like this.
Absolutely. One that saves a lot of time, case reduction. So request for information, then the reduction, it saves so much time to our information officers. It's generative AI is so good. It should be part of any digital
That should be
transformation.
on a t-shirt or something.
Yeah, I don't get paid for any of these, but yeah, like road maintenance, there's computer vision right now. There's a lot of software that are different. Some of them integrate with Technology One, which tends to be an ERP in 70% of the local governments in Australia. So, with the cameras, they can see if there's a pothole and what's the severity, and then it comes to business, it comes to us straight away, so we know what is the severity, and we should put it in the scheduled maintenance for later, but it's something that we have to do now, and that can save a lot of time. We're thinking on that's a pilot thing we're seem to deploy in the future. And the one that I really like is Scarborough Precinct is community safety are onto AI like pros in this city. I love that for them. It's the real-time detection of crowd surging and weapons. So you can put that in your CCTV cameras. There's so much.
That's
There's
amazing.
just so much.
That's amazing. Yeah, indeed, it can be implemented in so many different services provided by council. It can be, and so powerful what it can do.
I think we've got to the point that if you think of a use case, you can apply a form of AI to it in this day and age.
Yeah.
Instead of us thinking about use cases, is give me what is your problem, and there's probably an AI form to solve it.
Yeah. No, I agree. Sometimes we ask people, what is the job you're trying to do? And we'll tell you how an AI could help you do it for you or do it with you. So definitely, this is definitely the way forward. That's amazing. Everything you've been doing, City of Stirling. Do you think what could be a key lesson or two key lessons that other council listening to us today during this webinar could take from City of Stirling, could take away with them?
I've got many, so you cannot restrict me to two. One, it's all in the mindset. You need to want it to go for it. It doesn't have to be big and unattainable and unachievable. It can be something cheap and cheerful, like starting with Copilot. The chat comes for free. Everybody that has an email in or an E3 license in your agency could be using it. You don't need an AI strategy. You don't need a heavy loaded document to start. It's the mindset. And then if you need an AI strategy with the governance and you need to document everything, go for your life. We don't have one. We have AI embedded in our digital strategy. It's just a mention to it. Yeah. But what we have is an intention. What we have is a roadmap, a tactical roadmap, like a high level type of roadmap. What we have is the go for it and make it people centered. So if you can use your change management team, you do. If you don't have change management, that's okay. And train all the time. We do communications on a monthly basis. The cybersecurity team, we have 2 officers. They create the articles with Copilot. And they inform our people in the intranet website about things that are coming with phishing or dangers with AI or things that we can have. But it can be cheap and it doesn't have to be costly. You can create a community of practice or a small gathering of people interested in AI where they share the ways or ideas or did you hear? This is what we do. It's costing us virtually no money.
I love this idea. Indeed, like it doesn't have to be a costly exercise because it starts with people. It can start with discussion, conversation, and knowledge sharing. People teaching other people how they best use Copilot or any platform solution they're using. That's amazing. So where to now? Where to next for City of Stirling and you? What's on your plate?
The sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. So when it comes to AI, it's the same. So look, we're not at that point where we can deploy AI or we can do AI native. So because we were not part of Azure, so we're migrating to Azure as part of our digital transformation. So we're migrating from on-prem, so the servers that we can see on the room next to my office to Azure. We don't have a cloud data platform in itself. So we're buying things that have AI embedded to it, but we can put some governance and some assurance to it. we're going to start building agents, so internally for our people, but also externally, chatbots for our community so they can do self-serve, right? And little by little, we do something, we test it, we amplify, we renovate, we come back to it, we do a little bit more, we'll see where it goes. But more training to our people, more community of practice, more AI champions, more people on the journey, because this is not gonna stop. More normalization of AI as a really good tool for us to have the capacity to deliver increasing services, increasing population, increasing demands. That's where we're going, normalizing AI on everything.
That's exciting. An exciting and ambitious journey ahead. Thank you so much, Miriam. It's been amazing talking to you. And
thank you for having me.
Pleasure anytime. Thank you so much, Miriam. Thank you. All right. All right, so now we have time for a few questions. We're moving to the Q&A part of this webinar. So I've been seeing people sending me a question directly. So I'll have a look at a few of them, read a few, and maybe direct them between either Liam or maybe Miriam. Let me have a look. All right. This one, okay. Maybe question for you, Liam. How do you handle situation where leadership is aligned on AI, but frontline staff are resistant or anxious about the adoption of AI?
Yeah, so good question. I think the first thing to recognize is that resistance usually isn't about the technology itself. It's about what people think the technology means for them. So when someone hears AI, they're often hearing, my job's going to change in ways I can't control. And, that's a reasonable response. I think what we've found is being upfront about what AI will and won't change about someone's role, and involving people early rather than presenting them with a finished plan later is probably the way to go. And look, if your frontline staff feel like AI is being done to them, I think you'll get resistance on the back of that. If they feel like they're part of shaping how it's used, you get the engagement. The other thing is showing, not telling, I think. If you show a 15-minute demo of AI helping someone in a similar role do their work better, it's worth more than any sort of amount of strategic messaging from the top down. So yeah, that's probably my view.
That's a good one. Another one, we talk about governance and governance framework and how they're critical for council to put some boundaries around safe AI adoption. How do you ensure that those frameworks remain fit for purpose, considering the technology evolves so fast? And also, how do you make sure they don't become too cumbersome for organizations?
I think the honest answer is you have to build them to be adaptive from the start. So if you write like a 40-page AI policy that tries to cover every scenario, the honest answer, it'll be outdated before it's approved. So I think what works better at the start, at least, is a principle-based framework, clear escalation paths, so people actually know how to make decisions when they encounter something new. The AI Charter of Principles in this report is a good example of that approach. You set the guardrails around values and a risk tolerance, and then you review regularly, maybe quarterly, considering the technology is moving so fast. So governance should be a living process rather than static documents.
That makes sense. And one last question, which is interesting. It's, I think, tying back to the statistic you mentioned earlier, around only 20% of councils have actually starting identifying AI use cases. There's a question about how do you identify the best use cases for your organization, for council?
Again, I think this sort of comes back to starting with your people and understanding what's going to be the highest value for them going into those particular areas, or you just pick one area to go into that's high impact, high volume, and just start there. Have a conversation with the people who are at the front line, understand how they're spending their time, their utilization. It's 80%. Oftentimes we hear this ratio where it's like 80% admin, 20%, customer facing. And those are the key points where it'll be much more desirable to have AI implemented. But in terms of our practice, we use desirability, viability, feasibility as our methodology around that.
That makes sense. Thanks, Liam. Thank you so much, people, for submitting questions during the webinar. All very interesting questions. We'll share more of them in a follow-up communication. So we're now coming to the end of this webinar, and I would like to close with just a few takeaways from today's session. And I guess I have two key takeaway messages that are correlated. The first one being that from what we've heard, every local government has a role to play in advancing this technology and its benefit, regardless of where they stand on their AI journey. And with that, also acknowledging that indeed local government organizations in WA, but also across Australia, are at all different stages of this journey, whether they are pre-awareness, exploring, or piloting and implementing. But I think what's important is understanding where you sit as an organization, at which stage you are, and what would be the step to move towards like a better, safer adoption of AI. So whether it's like starting with awareness and education and change management, as Miriam and Liam mentioned, or like understanding the value, the use cases, or even starting redesigning your governance around AI and becoming a bit more an AI native organization. So that's, I think, the key takeaway from this session. And across this journey, we'll be delighted to help you on this journey, of course, and can definitely assist you. All right. Well, I would like to say that on behalf of the strategy group, WALGA, and the City of Sterling, thank you so much for your time today. If anything from today's session sparked a question, there is something else you'd like to explore, please don't hesitate to reach out to Liam or myself. You can see our contact details on the slide. You can take a picture or a screenshot. We'll share with you the recap of this webinar and reach out to you to explore how we can assist you in your own AI journey. I would like again to thank Nick, Will, Liam, and Miriam for such a generous contribution to today and for their time. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you so much.